Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us in this new thrilling FTB Lunch and Learn series in which we will guide you on an expedition through life at Wood. We'll be showcasing a new professional every month and providing you with a comprehensive glimpse into their daily routine, from sunrise to sunset, their contributions and the distinctive duties and obligations they bear. This type of content is what you have all asked for, and we hope that this inspires you to take a new role in energy. So today we have Carrie Sedge. She's a Senior Vice President, Marketing Communications at Wood and has over 17 years of experience in this domain. Carrie, I cannot wait to dig deep into your career journey. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to talk to you about this. And it's interesting being on the opposite side of the camera, given my job with you today. So thanks for having me.
Well, let's dig into a little bit of your educational background. What did you study, and kind of run us through the last 17 years in terms of career?
For sure. So my background, what I studied educationally was actually in communications. So I did a degree in communications, and then I started actually working for PR firms, so on the consultancy side of it, and I did public relations, post my degree for a cross sector of companies. Honestly, Maciel, in every kind of sector, from automotive to education, not for profit, and then actually ultimately energy. So I'm originally from Scotland, and given Aberdeen's nature as the energy capital of Europe, it was really hard to avoid the sector actually, such a big part of business and economy in Scotland. So I ended up managing a number of energy clients across the course of my career in agencies. And found it to be really fascinating. It wasn't on my target radar as the sector I wanted to work in, but really kind of got into it, found it full of unbelievably talented people, really inspiring, lots of likability. It's a sector where people are so open and excited to tell their stories. So there was always lots moving and shaking and changing and challenging and growing in the sector. So I was kind of drawn by the entrepreneurial nature of it, actually. It's a sector that's unafraid of change and always pushing the envelope. So from a communications perspective and in my background, there was always an incredible story to be told. There was always, people wanting to share theirs. And carving my communications career in the sector is something I've thoroughly enjoyed and just haven't looked back on. My father was Irish, and a great storyteller by nature, and it must have been something that's rubbed off because just being able to hear and tell and shape people's stories is still the kind of the one thing that makes me tick as a professional in this field.
I love it. I could tell that just choosing communications was the best thing that Carrie could have done. I mean, you couldn't have chosen just a different, you could tell you're so passionate about it. So tell me a little bit about just a degree in communications. I truly like, what does somebody who studies communications do afterwards? Like, I can't think of I really have no idea.
So, when I originally studied communications and I did my honors in journalism, so I was always just someone that I loved to write. That was it. And my love of this career was born simply out of love of reading and writing. And so I thought, how do I turn this into a career? And I was always kind of like, oh, could I be a journalist? Is that what I want to do? And then this course came up. It was the very first year that it had ever run at the university, and I was interested in it. And so I went into corporate communications, but I didn't realize there was quite so many disciplines across the communications field. Um, and I remember studying everything from internal communications and public relations and marketing and advertising and all these things. And I think, how does this all come together in a role? Interestingly, actually, someone was talking to me recently, one of our interns, about my course and their course and how it correlates. And I always remember going back and the one part of my course that didn't chime with me, or I didn't really fully correlate the impact of it, was the psychology part of doing a degree. So there, I look back now and realize how hugely relevant it was. But at the time, I couldn't figure out how psychology was so important to the kind of field of, I just wanted to write. I just wanted to tell good stories with it. But actually being able to communicate and captivate an audience, whether it's one person or it's a mass of people, all comes down to understanding people's psyche. So what do they consume? How do they consume? Why do they consume? What resonates with them? What doesn't, and why? And so it's all about understanding behaviors, emotions, decision-making points, buying habits, information desires. What are people looking for? And that's core to the kind of role of anyone working in communications and in that field. But at the core of it, it still comes down to a love of writing and storytelling. And the rest of the parts of the job I've just had to kind of learn over time. But I think one of the beauties I've had in my career and one of the greatest parts of it is, when I moved in-house with Wood, so that was 2009, 2010 out of agencies there. All of my roles in communications over the course of my career here have been in different fields. So I've worked in public relations, and that's that kind of media facing media relations role where you're constantly trying to promote the company and the kind of share of voice that the company has as thought leaders in your sector, in your region, in your field. And then you've got the kind of the marketing piece of it, right? And that's really looking at how do you reach audiences, where the communications part focuses more on what do you want to say to those audiences. So you craft the message and then you think about how do you reach them from that point of view. I've also worked in public affairs. So, we're a listed business, and you're always kind of looking at how you're working in the markets and, with the local governments and the communities in and around the impact that you make. And executive communications is a huge part of this. The voice of a company starts at the top. And so really kind of like working with our executive team and our CEOs to kind of shape the culture and the tone from the top in an organization has also been a kind of key part of it. And then one of the most enjoyable parts of any kind of communications field in a role like this is the employee engagement. And so really thinking about, how do you reach 35,000 people? One message doesn't fit all. There's never a one size approach to it, right? So how do you craft messages that are meaningful to an organization, and starting to see that kind of develop in the cultural fabric of the business. And we talk about brands a lot, certainly in our field. And I think when people sometimes think about a brand, they're thinking about the kind of tangible things that they see, like your website and your logo and things like this. But actually, the brand is every touch point that any stakeholder has. So whether you invest in a firm, you work for a firm, or you work with a firm, everything you see, feel, hear, touch, experience is part of the brand, and the role that we play in shaping that and making that something that's attractive for our stakeholders is the exciting part of what we do there. So, it starts with the kind of the key core messaging, and then it kind of filters out from there. So it's a great role. It's a huge opportunity. And I think one of the greatest gifts I've had in my career in communications is the ability to move with my job. So I started in Scotland, and with Wood, I moved to Sydney, Australia, and had 4 years there, which was wonderful. So working across Australasia in that role. And then there was a big culture shock from Sydney, Australia to Lafayette, Louisiana.
Wow.
So that
I
was my
can
next
just
stop.
imagine.
But my goodness, I fell in love with my Cajun friends. What a community. It was wonderful to get that experience. And we've been in Houston, Texas now for the last maybe 5 years. So it's been a game changer, actually. The rich appreciation of different cultures and people and experiences is so fulfilling. And from a communications perspective, it's really kind of like shaped my broader understanding and ability to impact in different regions and audiences and ways and means, and just experience, the kind of the opportunities that come with that. So there's so much you can do with a communications career, and I guess my message there is that it's limitless if if you want it, because it touches so many parts of any business, actually.
I've learned so much in the last 5 minutes that what's really nice about this, and I'm so happy that, you're talking about communications, it's sometimes overlooked. You think of operations role, HR roles, engineering, and it's the first time I truly hear about the scope of communications, and it's all things that sound really exciting and that all businesses need and are crucial to a business. To your point, how the employees see you is internal communications, how your customers see you, how the government sees you. Like, it touches so many points that we kind of forget about right? So it's really
Absolutely.
impressive, just all of the things that you've mentioned, and also just like the borderless career of being able to move around and kind of still using those skill sets of communication. And one question that just popped into my mind throughout your 17 plus years of experience is, how has your role in communications changed with social media? I think when you started, there was no LinkedIn. They weren't preparing like
Mhm.
Instagram videos, which I'm sure now you've had to adapt and kind of see the new world. Can you tell us a
Yep.
little bit about that digital journey?
Oh, it's changed hugely. When I look back, I first started in public relations. We were still, we had cutting rooms where you would sit and like literally have to cut newspaper clippings, and then we would stick and paste them into folders, and you would send them out to the client with a copy of their press cuttings for the month, and then you would measure how many column inches it was to determine the value of that piece of material that you
Wow.
had secured for them. So to go from that to the analytics that you get immediately now on digital communications is, absolutely huge and game changing. I think the biggest thing for us is it's a 24/7 game. So the world never stops, and our role as communicators means that we're working 24/7. And as much as our role is to promote and really kind of position your brand, your leaders, your services, your solutions. A huge part of our role is also to protect. So it's protecting the reputation of the business, of the firm, of the company, of the leaders themselves. We are that's a huge part, right? And that's really hard to do in a digital world as well, because you have two-way communications now that you never had in the
Yeah.
past. So you're having to really think about that kind of transparency piece. So, when you're promoting, you've got to think about how does that work when you're protecting as well. Um, it's enabling us though. Everything that we do digitally now is a complete enablement. You think about even Chat GPT, that coming to the fore now and how you use that. We had some great test cases recently. Our digital manager, I was sitting with him, working with him in the UK, looking at we're restructuring our website just now and all the content and the copy that comes with that in terms of the strategic story that we're telling. And you play with Chat GPT and you look at how much content generation can be done in seconds that would take
Seconds.
hours for a communications professional to craft. And you think, wow, what's the benefit and the curse of that, both equally. But there's ways and means that we will embrace this, and we will, because we have to. And I started to see as well, just our creative services manager was showing me Adobe are doing very similar things with, imagery and creative elements, the impact and the changes, the manipulation of imagery in a similar sense, using that kind of AI capability. So it's changing every day, every turn, and we will never be able to keep up with it, but we have to embrace it. The channels to us are really important. I look at 10 years ago to where we are today and how we engage. It's huge. I remember talking about Yammer in the organization, and every engineer and accountant that is the large majority of Wood's
Yeah.
employee base were just like, absolutely not. And now everyone's on Yammer.
Yeah.
Every message is 30,000 people's eyes and engagement. And actually, the beauty of it is it's two-way now. So you're able to get that instant kind of measure of, did it land, did it work, did it hit the mark, or did it not? So getting that kind of like live feedback all the time is a huge part of our job, and then making sure that we're pivoting just as quickly in our responses, in our positioning, in our stories that we tell as well, to ensure that we're constantly meeting the mark of our stakeholders.
I really liked what you said about just adapting to the new things that are coming, because they're going to be here to stay. And so you might as well be one of those companies that's ahead of the curve. And I think after the pandemic, a lot of companies that maybe didn't want to be on LinkedIn, or that thought that social media wasn't the thing, they quickly realized that this is how business is done nowadays. And that's how students are picking companies they want to go work at, is
Mm-hmm.
based on their
Yeah.
social media presence, and do they
Mm-hmm.
look fun enough or cool enough, or show me a diverse kind of career portfolio that is all showcased online. And so it's nice to hear that just with all the changes that are coming, you guys are adapting quickly to it.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you went through a communications degree and you're still in communications, but maybe there's somebody, at Wood or just listening to this that says, Carrie's job sounds exactly like what I would like to do, but I'm an engineer or and I'm an accountant, etc. Is it possible to have some sort of like cross degree pollination where you can just become in communications and maybe, is that possible, or do you think you truly need like a communications degree?
No, I don't think you do. I don't. I mean, the one thing I would say is you have to hone your skills. So it's not just a career you can jump into. And actually, I often find that, it would be like saying, can a process engineer jump into being a mechanical engineer? And there's always going to be a part of where you're going to hone your skills. If you've got passion and you've got, natural talent and you've got some kind of background in something, you can get there. Not everyone's a writer, but it's a skill that can be learned. And if you're considering a career in communications or marketing, and starting to build the fundamentals is where it's really important. So exercising that writing muscle, it does always start there. Even when we are recruiting, even at intern level, we set writing tests, just because it's such a core fundamental skill of what we do in being able to craft, write a compelling message, a compelling story, a narrative that is meaningful to mass audiences. I think the best communication skills, or the best, communications professionals also have good auditory skills. So, it's important to be able to articulate yourself well, and be able to engage with your audiences. Visual arts experience is something as well. You don't have to be an expert in it, but you definitely have to have an eye for what works or what appeals or what does good look like.
Yeah.
So I would say invest time, and whether that's educating yourself or learning or getting experience in these areas, that would be absolutely core. But when I think about we've interviewed a lot, especially recently, and I think about the candidates that have stood out to me and the people that I've spoken to that have really kind of jumped out to me as having the potential is those with passion. So it's a field that requires real commitment to the cause. So you've got to ensure it's something that you're passionate about, something that you care about. As we just said there, the world never stops, and communications is a 24/7 role. So you have to be prepared for that. It's a big commitment, and it requires real passion, energy, and resilience, to kind of want to get into this field. So, I think people see the outcome and the output of effort
Yes.
all the time, and it looks great, right? It looks like it's something fun to be involved with or something really purposeful, but actually it's hard graft in the background, to get there. And often the simplest campaigns, the simplest stories, the simplest headlines are the hardest ones to craft and to develop. So, it's a hard yards career. So if you're interested in it, hone your skills, work hard, have that natural born passion, then you can absolutely, flip into the sector.
I truly love what you said about just being passionate about it, because you're right. It doesn't matter necessarily. I mean, having the degree helps, but even if you are coming from a different career background, but you're passionate and you have a good eye and you're a good writer, etc., you can prove yourself. Then you can definitely kind of showcase that you're right for the role. You can kind of
Yeah.
move over. And thinking about communications is, and to your point, is sometimes it seems like, oh, this campaign or this, title, etc., looks really fun and easy, but it could have been months. I'm sure you guys work on things that take months, years,
Oof.
maybe to craft, and we just
Hmm.
see the end result, but there is
Hmm.
so much hard work behind it. And
Hmm.
also just thinking about responsibility, you guys in communications hold what the company says. I mean, that is so powerful.
Hmm.
And it could be a lot of responsibility if it's done wrong as well, right? One wrong word, one wrong sentence. That is a lot of
Yeah.
responsibility that I'm just like thinking in terms of the comms team. So it seems like a very, rewarding career at the end of the day, because there's a lot of challenges to your point as well that you have to.
Yeah. Do it's interesting. We have this conversation as a team as well. It's one of the things I enjoy most about the job. One of the most rewarding things is, you get to see your work, published for the world to see. So whether you've got that front page news headline, whether your campaign has really landed and resonated well, whether you've gone viral, like every single part of something is such an exciting and exhilarating sense of, just satisfaction and achievement, and that's never lost on me. but it's a blessing and a curse because
Yeah.
everything that you do is visual, right? It's seen by so many stakeholders, and that sense of, I think every communications professional that listens to this will understand that that moment that you're about to hit send or publish or print or go live in any way, shape, or form, there's still nerves always, always, because you're preempting how people are going to react, how they're going to feel, how it's going to land, is it going to be a success? And it's not always, we're still human beings at the end of the day as well. We are going to make mistakes. We're not always going to get it right. And the difference is, in many other disciplines, your mistakes will be behind the scenes, and for us, it's
It's in the
not.
forefront. It's right there.
Absolutely, and people do not hesitate to tell you when you haven't hit the mark, and so you've got to have quite a thick skin, quite a resilience, and that's where the months of preparation in the background are really important. And it's really important to test your messages, to listen to your audiences, to really know who you're engaging with, and what your purpose and objectives of that are. So, these things aren't just made up. There is method in the madness behind it to get there. And that's where, by the time we're going live, especially as a FTSE listed company with 35,000 employees, all of the major energy companies as our clients, it's really important that we are thinking through every step, every message, every position, and kind of step that we take from a communications and marketing perspective. But I will say, for the large part, the team I work with are just outstanding, phenomenal individuals. We get so much energy and ideas from each other, and if you've ever worked with or know or sit near any of the marketing communications team at Wood, it sure is a fun place to be. The ideas are limitless and the fun is just as high. So there's lots of great work happens and comes from this team.
It seems to be very collaborative, to your point, and just like idea sharing and let's try different things and perspectives and just teamwork, which is super crucial. So talking a little bit about your day to day as, senior vice president of marketing and communications, tell me a little bit about what your day looks like. So, do you have to go to the office every day? Do you work with teams from around the world, or is mainly focused in the US? Just dive deep a little bit into like, even what time do you wake up at?
Oh my gosh, too early. It was funny, we were having this conversation this week. So I start really early. I've never worked earlier than when I moved to Houston. We are literally behind the whole world in this time zone. So the nature of my role is global, and it means that I am conversing right across, obviously, North America, LATAM, through the UK, Europe, and across to Australia and Asia. And actually, having worked across, and lived in all three time zones as well, this is by far the hardest one for the early mornings. So you have to. It's a crack of dawn start every day. So I normally get up at 5:30. I have a young daughter too, so I typically try and get the calls in with the UK that start really particularly early on the front end. Then take the break, get my daughter ready, out to school, and then back on the phone. So a late start meeting wise for me would be 8 o'clock, which is a really nice day.
Yeah.
So that normally comes on a Friday. And then it's through the day. So mornings normally from really early in the morning until lunchtime, it's all backlogged with calls. So I find myself chained to teams for a lot of it just because of the kind of global nature of, all the stakeholders we're engaging with. But a lot of that time is really kind of quite heavily in that kind of European sphere there, particularly in the UK. I tend to get a bit more thinking time in that afternoon space, which is nice, and a little more thinking time engagement with the team here in Houston and across the kind of the US and Canada, which is great. I love that time. That's when I can get a bit more hands-on with things. And then the evenings, it actually works quite nicely from here, being able to connect with our teams in Perth once I'm into the kind of early evening time, my time, but not too regularly. Everyone's really quite, tries to be respectful of time in that sense. So Mondays and Fridays, in the new world, I work from home. And so largely in when we need to be. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm in our office here in Houston. But I travel quite a bit as well, so I'm always kind of overseas at least once a quarter. So Aberdeen, London, and Milan. Next trip, Australia. So we get together as a team, post COVID. The time spent together is just invaluable, both with my team and the kind of broader business stakeholders, which is wonderful. But I do benefit too from being in Houston, being our kind of headquarters for the Americas. So there's a lot of people come through here as well, which also helps me with not having to travel as often because so many come here, which is a huge benefit. So I really enjoy that side of it. But yes, I have learned to love being an early morning person. It does mean I've sacrificed any kind of exercise in the morning because I just can't do it any earlier than that. So I've found Embody Fitness in Houston here, which do great evening classes, and I've got a Peloton so that I can get on it at any
Good.
kind of moment's notice on a weekend.
That's awesome. Okay, so I really like what you mentioned about like having to work on a global, team because that's what your role is, and so you do have to communicate with people around the world, and so the timing is just kind of from morning to kind of evening. It's always hard to get those people from Australia because their time zone is just up there. So really nice to see that it's flexible too in terms of like working from home for a few days, working at the office, kind of getting that real mix. I'm glad you answered the question on travel because that was definitely something I wanted to ask. So it seems you travel like once a quarter overseas, so long flights, kind of being away from home, but at least it's once a quarter. There are some roles that it's weekly or every month or never home. So it's kind of nice to see that you do get a little bit of that like work-life balance of like being home, especially with a younger daughter and
Yes.
kind of getting to travel, but being home. That part is really nice. And so in terms of just you seem, and a lot of the people that we talk would, just the culture seems really happy and like collaborative and like teamwork, a lot of inspiring leaders. What are a few things of like why you're at Wood and like what makes you so proud to work there?
It does actually. It's a cliche, but it starts with the people. I actually had a little sabbatical from Wood at one point. I left. We call ourselves the boomerangers because we left and we came back. And I came back because the people here are so humbly remarkable. And that sense of kindness that comes in the organization is really something to be treasured and valued. So there's a huge kind of like drive and commitment in the business, but there's also just like really, really good people. I think second to that, in the job that I do, communications and marketing is a discipline where, we touched on this earlier, you have a seat at every table. You're involved in absolutely everything from whether it's crisis management to, shaping the CEO's narrative to starting up new businesses, projects, solutions, products, regions, right through to the kind of mainstay of that kind of employee engagement. And so you have a seat at every table, but often you don't necessarily have the kind of the same freedom in the organization because to your point, a business might prioritize what are kind of maybe core functions and core businesses from an operational perspective. I've never felt that at Wood. I feel like Wood really does prize communications and marketing as a really important part of its culture, its reputation, its position, its brand in the market, and the freedom and the trust that comes with that has been huge. So both, from our executive level and into our businesses, and that freedom is really important because it's our job to always be 10 steps ahead. So, and we should be, and we're always trying to be, and it's a marathon, like it's a sprint run marathon, constantly trying to keep ahead of the business, but trying to kind of really get on that front foot, to take the risks, to have the creative edge in things, to push the envelope of what is possible in terms of where you're trying to go with the kind of positioning of the company and getting those 10 steps ahead. It requires trust. You will never get it without, otherwise you'll only be in the reactive space and not in the proactive space in terms of that. So the thing I love about Wood is the people I work with. They're just wonderful, both in the marketing communications community. It's a team like no other. But both that and across our business, in every region I've worked in, I think the one thing that unites Wood is the people. And it doesn't matter, the culture, the type of business, the business unit, the grouping, the region. There is a kind of solidarity in and around, everyone's batting for the same team, and there's a sense of pride in that. And then also the trust and freedom that we get, and the respect that we get in the communications function from the business just really fills my cup up every day. It makes our job enjoyable, and it means that there is no limit to the possibilities of what we can do.
I really love what you said about just trust and people, because you're right. If you don't have the trust, then any ideas that you come up with on the communications marketing plan, and if they're not well received all the time by the businesses, it really needs to kind of flow together as a team. And I think, to your point, maybe with communications and marketing, just in general, what I've seen is, they're like the support function. You're not necessarily bringing in the revenue. You're not in operations, and we kind of just put you to the side. So it's really nice to see that it's like a lot of respect towards what you guys do and what you bring to the table on the communications marketing side, which showcases on your LinkedIn and just all the platforms that you guys are doing. It's really nice to see. So to close, I wanted to ask you, for anyone listening that looks up to Carrie and wants to one day be the senior vice president of communications and marketing at Wood, what is one piece of advice that you have for them, and maybe what is one thing they should work on developing that is really crucial to be successful in this role?
Oh, one piece of advice. So I would say say no to nothing. Is that what's my terminology here? Say yes to everything. I think, I have always been very much in the open-minded, let's go after it, go get them, kind of, we can do this, there's nothing we can't achieve kind of space. So that kind of open-mindedness, that drive, desire, passion, are really important. Saying yes to every opportunity that comes in front of you, and often I say yes and then figure out how we're going to do it after.
Take it
Both
till
for
you
me,
make it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Both for me in my career and in terms of the work that we do. So I'm real kind of like 2 feet in first, to kind of get after the things that are important. I think my dad, I think I said this to you previously, he was a real Irish philosopher, and he used to always say, I am what I am because we are. And it's such a simple saying, right? But when you think about it, I think I'm always led by the business. My role shapes and changes based on what the business needs, and I'm propelled by that, and I'm always excited by what the business is doing. And it was one of the reasons that I was drawn to the energy sector in the first place, because it's always shaking and moving, and and I believe in riding that wave and going with it, but always grabbing kind of every opportunity with two hands and gusto, and commitment to just give it all a go. So my advice is just always, come into this sector, come into the field of communications with a real open mind, a hard work ethic, a passion and belief in what you do, and a mindset that never says no, and there will be opportunities for you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. You've really inspired me to just learn more about communications, because it's truly a field that I kind of didn't know much about. I mean, you kind of like think but it's
Yeah,
so much
yeah.
more in depth. With even just the terms that you were using of like PR, investor relations, public relations, like advertisement. You think it's all one thing, but they're all such different
Yeah,
disciplines. And so
yeah.
it's, I feel like with this episode, we've just kind of uncovered the beauty of communications in organizations that I don't think a lot of people maybe like pay attention to, but it's truly another world that is like there. So
And
it's,
the art form in good communications is that you don't know what goes on behind the scenes, actually.
yes, you really
So it's
don't.
yeah, it's making sure that it's seamless, it's effortless, that it's there, it just happens. And actually, we're furiously in the background of everything, constantly, lining it all up, making sure it all speaks, looking at your stakeholders, looking at your channels, looking at the messaging, and trying to stay those 10 steps ahead, so that, by the time the business is talking in the way of the message, they're 6 months behind when you launched
Hmm.
it, you know. But that's when you know it's working and it's resonating and it's getting there. But we are always in the background of things rather than the foreground. And the feeling and the sense that you have where you don't think about how that works is it means that we're doing a good job.
It is, it is. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. And thank you
Pleasure.
for tuning in today, everyone. And make sure you stay tuned for our next guest next month. See ya.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Bye.